Welcome everybody to another episode of So Random and Weird Pod. I'm your host for today, Sarah.
And I'm Sheena.
And don't forget, you can listen to us. We're on Spotify. You can find us on Insta. We're on Amazon. We're on Apple. I know you can also reach out to us if you have any shout outs and things on Facebook and our email, which is the so random and weird pod at gmail.com. So please listen to us, share us with your friends, reach out. And yes, what a day. What a day. Another start to the week. Yay. How are you doing,
Definitely.
friend?
Well, if you see me melt into a puddle, just know that in
I
about
just,
months I'll be back.
all I, when you said that, all I thought of was like, I'm melting, melting.
I feel like it.
Oh my
it.
gosh.
It's 90 degrees out here, and granted, my apartment doesn't have like bad
I
view, like it
I
doesn't
think
have
you
just
may
great.
need to invest, like, in, like, a window AC or something, friend, or because, I mean, I know you said that before too, and you're like, "Well, it doesn't really get that hot," but I feel like it's been, like, hot, like, a lot there recently, and, I mean, I don't want you to melt away. So,
I can just come back in a couple of months. Just like Olaf.
yeah, yeah, you definitely can. I mean, I just I don't like anyone to suffer in the heat, and I know when I'm, like, really hot and stuff, I'm miserable, like, when I'm in pain, I'm miserable, when I'm really hot, I'm miserable, and if I'm in pain and really hot, beware. So, you don't wanna be around me. It's like, nope. So needless to say, no longer really doing Civil War reenacting unless it's, like, in October or December, and of course, there really wasn't a whole lot going on during those times, like but a lot of it was, like, in the heat where they wanted to fight these battles in 90-degree heat and all wool uniforms because that makes sense to me. Anyway,
Yeah. Well, also, I forgot to say last week, happy Pride, everybody.
yes. Oh my gosh, my daughter's birthday was on Saturday, and she loves that her birthday is in Pride Month. She loves it, and, like, every time she plays gorilla tag on the VR, and every time, like, it's Pride Month, gorilla tag has, like, pride trinkets and things that you can buy, and she always, wants to buy, like, these pride flags and things like that, and she flies them and everything, and then, but, she sometimes gets a little bullied by, people are like, "What are you doing? Why are you gay?" It's like, "You know what?" And she doesn't care. She doesn't
Right.
care. She loves it. She's she's still figuring things out, as to who she is and, how she feels and things like that, and but she was asking me I took her to a cat cafe in Lancaster on her birthday. That's when yeah, you love it, friend. On each of their
Coffee?
birthdays. Yep, coffee and cats. On each of their birthdays, I spend the day with them, and it's kinda like a little mini yes day. I mean, with limitations, like, we can't, like, drive to, like, Disney World or, do anything, like, majorly expensive. I don't have, like, trillions and trillions of dollars. "Oh, yeah, sure, spend $3,000, like these
Mhm.
influencers do, and, like, you can whatever it is. But, we have food, we eat where they wanna eat, and we go and do what they wanna do, and, you know so I took her to the cat cafe in Lancaster, and, they have it was, she had a drink, excuse me, that you could make it gay for Pride Month, 'cause they were very pride pride in the cafe. They had stickers, and they had, the banners and things like that, and so she got a sticker because it was her birthday. They gave her a sticker, and, she made her vanilla iced latte, she made it gay, so they put whipped cream in it with, like, these rainbow, like, dissolvable crystals and a little pride flag, like, stick thing, that she loved. It was a heart.
Oh,
And then,
that's
we got to go in the back and be with the cats, for, about 50 minutes, and one of the workers, came in, and she's Pan, and she was talking to Arya, and, Arya was kinda telling her, how she feels and things. So it was really neat. It was really neat for Arya to be able to talk and connect and then, of course, it was just being with the cats. That cat cafe is really fascinating. Like, they had, like, a tube, where the cats can walk, like, above, close to the ceiling, that it goes from room to room to room, and it goes, like, even into the bathrooms, like, the cats can, like, watch you go to the bathroom from above, you can look up and there's, like, a cat, like, like, staring down at
Oh,
you.
well,
It was
it's better
cool.
than them sitting over there trying to break down the door.
That's true, that's true. But it was really neat. It was a really neat experience. I'd never been there. She'd been there once before, but yeah, it was fun. So but yeah, no, she loves it. Her birthday's in Pride Month, and um yeah, I love that she loves it. I love that she loves it. Alright. Well, I am going to since I am hosting today, I got a free space, and I I hardly ever do serious, true crime because I with everything going on in the world, I always try to pick lighter, funner things, but I thought, you know what? I don't do a whole lot of true crime, and I really feel like I should because that's part of our podcast is true crime, and I'm sure there are listeners who really wanna hear true crime. And I have a friend, he lived in Gainesville, Florida, and he had told me about a serial killer that, was down in Gainesville, Florida. He and his family had just moved to Gainesville, like, in June of 1980, and here comes the serial killer, in 2 months later, killing, um yeah, so around, in the Gainesville area when he lived there with his family, and I was like, "Oh my gosh," and the more he told me and the more I researched, I was like, "Alright, I'm gonna do this." So,
All right.
I am gonna talk about the Gainesville Ripper. This episode does cover a series of murders that took place in Gainesville, Florida in August of 1990. The details include violence and sexual assault, so if that's not something you wanna listen to right now, this might be a good one to skip for now, because I do go into some detail, but I'm not gonna I don't wanna get too graphic, but I do wanna let anyone know who has any kind of sensitivity to those things. So, right, I'm gonna begin. Uh, it is late August 1990, Gainesville, Florida, home of the University of Florida, the Gators, and about 35,000 college students who were just starting to trickle back into town for the fall semester. If you've ever been a part of a college town in those days before classes start, the feeling there's moving trucks everywhere, parents helping to haul like croutons up 3 flights of stairs, pizza boxes piling up in the dumpsters, and before the first picture even begins, and it's just there's this particular energy that's, both kind of exciting and chaotic at the same time because it's just craziness, and, ooh, there's thunder and lightning. Ooh, true
Ooh,
crime and a thunderstorm going on in my area. Yay! Hopefully, I don't
set
lose
the
any electricity.
ambiance.
Hopefully, I don't lose any electricity or anything. Cross my fingers. Anyway, so, that's the Gainesville that existed, on August 23rd of 1990. By August 27th, it would be a very different place. A place where students were sleeping with the lights on, where hardware stores had sold out of deadbolts and pepper spray, where parents drove down in the middle of the night to pull their kids out of school. It became a very scary place for parents and teachers and even the residents who lived in Gainesville. So in the span of about 4 days, 5 young people, most of them new students just starting their lives, were murdered in their own apartments. The crimes were brutal enough that even seasoned homicide detectives said they'd never seen anything like it, and for months, the person responsible was walking around free, with no one having any idea of who he was.
Well,
And then
this is not too long after Bundy
yeah,
had been down there.
yeah. So so this is the story of the Gainesville student murders, sometimes called the Gainesville Ripper case, and how a 4-day killing spree changed an entire community's relationship with safety and indirectly shaped horror movies for a generation, which I'll go into. So I'm gonna walk through this, roughly in the order that it happened, what the police found, who the victims were, the panic that followed, and then about halfway through, I'll discuss how they finally figured out who did it. Because the way this case was solved is almost as unsettling as the crimes themselves. So, the person responsible, ironically, had already been arrested. He was sitting in jail the whole time. So, let's start off.
Usually how it
So the
goes.
yeah. So the first night, it's Friday, August 24th, 1990, early morning hours, between like midnight and 4 a.m. Two 18-year-old freshmen roommates. They had just moved into their apartment near campus. They were getting ready for their very first week of school. One of them planned to study early childhood education, and the other had told friends she wanted to go into criminal justice. She was interested in becoming a crime scene investigator, ironically enough.
Oy.
Yeah. Sometime in those early morning hours, someone broke into their apartment. The details of what happened next are a little bit hard to talk about, so just a warning. I'm not going to go into graphic detail, like I said earlier, just partly out of respect for the victims and their families, and partly because the specifics don't really add anything except shock value. And I'm not a big shock value person. I'm not. I don't need graphic details. What happens for the understanding of this case is the pattern, because that pattern is eventually what helped the investigators connect these crimes to the others. But both young women were killed. The crime scene was staged. And I want to be careful with that word staged because that's doing a lot of work here. This wasn't a chaotic, frenzied, you know, moment. The killer actually took his time, kind of like how Jack the Ripper eventually took his time with staging his last murder in England. He arranged things, this killer
Sure.
arranged things. So to the investigators walking through the crime scene in early in the morning, it was immediately clear that whoever had done this, wasn't just violent, he was deliberate. And he seemed to want the scene to be found a certain way. So here's the part that made it even more disturbing for the people who discovered it. There was no sign of forced entry that anyone could initially explain, no obvious struggle that spilled out into the hallway, nothing that screamed crime scene from the outside. Gainesville police got the call, came out, and found two of their incoming students dead. At that point, nobody knew this was the beginning of anything. Murders happen, it's tragic, but they thought it was an isolated, awful event. Um, and so police started working it like any other homicide investigation. Two victims, one location, looking for a connection. Could it be an ex boyfriend? Could it be a drug deal gone wrong? Someone with a grudge? So they had less than 24 hours of that illusion left before the second night. And that was Saturday, August the 25th. It happened again. This time, the victim was an 18-year-old student living alone in a duplex a short distance away. When she didn't show up for her shift at the local courthouse where she had a part time job, a coworker and a sheriff's deputy went to check on her. What they found matched the pattern from the night before, closely enough that investigators immediately knew these two crime scenes are connected. Same level of planning, same disturbing staging. He had sexually assaulted the victims. He had mutilated them in some ways. That's all I'm going to say. Like I said, it was, again, no witnesses, no forced entry that made any obvious sense. Nothing that gave police an easy thread to pull.
Right.
By
Well,
Sunday,
and also it's it's so random, but yet at the same time it seems so what's the word I'm
yeah,
looking for?
yeah. Like it,
Planned out.
exactly. Like it, it, the first one was like, okay, this is, it's tragic, but this stuff happens. But then you have this again the second night in the same, another college student, same kind of planning, same kind of, everything the same. And like I said, there was definite sexual assault in the night, from the night before, from Friday the 24th, sexual assault on Saturday the 25th, mutilation. I mean, it was definitely a connection. There was definitely a link. So yeah, so it was a very terrifying very terrifying thing because by Sunday, the 26th of August, Gainesville police had 2 crime scenes, 2 nights, 3 victims, and absolutely no suspect. They had no suspect. They had 3 bodies, 2 nights of a chaotic, of murder scenes, grisly murder scenes. Same level, like I said, same level of planning, everything just obviously connected. And that's when the local news started to pick it up. Not yet as like a serial killer story, but as 2 violent murders in 2 days near campus,
Hmm.
which for a town full of students who had just arrived from out of town was pretty terrifying, I'm sure. Pretty terrifying. Then came the worst night. Sunday into Monday, the 26th into the 27th, 2 more students were killed. This time it was a young man and a young woman, roommates sharing an apartment. He was about to start the University of Florida's architecture program, and she had recently been elected president uh, of a fraternity on campus. And by every account, she was sharp, ambitious, well liked, with a clear plan for her future. This crime scene told investigators something important. The male victim had put up a serious fight. He was a large, athletic young man. Um, there was evidence of a real struggle, which told police that whoever was doing this wasn't relying purely on surprise. He was willing to physically overpower someone much bigger than the previous victims, and he'd come prepared to do it. By Monday morning, Gainesville woke up to the news that 5 people, 5 students, all of them either incoming freshmen or about to start a new chapter at University of Florida, had been murdered in their apartments over the course of about 60 hours. And the person responsible still at large.
That's
So I do wanna pause and just sit like with this for a moment because these weren't just 5 isolated tragedies that happened to occur in the same week. The people living in Gainesville, especially like, students, but even residents, like my friend and his family. My friend was younger. He was a kiddo. I mean, this was terrifying. I mean, these were 5 strangers in 5 different apartments, all killed by what was very quickly understood to be the same person with no pattern that made any of them seem like targets in any way, you know? So, I mean, people didn't know who was next, they seemed to have no connection. They seemed to have no, like, they weren't all part of, like, the same, graduate program or my major program. There was no
well,
connection.
that
They
and
didn't know
also
each other, like
and as for serial killers, they usually will focus on one type.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I guess the only thing is that they were
Now
all college students, but and then also it escalates to like but it takes time, not just 4 days
mhm.
of escalation.
Now, it was said that the girls the only thing that I think the girls were similar in appearance. So
Okay.
that seemed to be the only major thing that could be determined at this point in time. The girls were all on the shorter side, brown hair. We find out eventually that they looked like the killer's mother in hair color, size, stature, etc.
Well,
But
I'm safe from that.
being what, almost 6 foot? Are you
I'm
6 foot?
5'10".
5
I'm 5'10".
You're not 5'10". You've always been a little bit taller than me, and I'm 5'10".
I'm 5'10".
10. But then people have been lying to me 'cause you're taller than I am. Anyway,
I
like I
was.
said, I
I've
like
always been taller than you except that one time that I got angry at you in elementary school.
well, between you, me, and Travis, we always try to fight it out. We always try to fight it out. Who was taller? Who was taller? Anyway, like I said, at the time, they didn't know, like, all the victims didn't know each other. There was no common thread investigators could point to and say, "Stay away from this," or "You'll be safe. Stay away from that." I know my friend was saying he was just telling me that he was terrified. Like, his he was so scared, to even like, get a bath when he was little because he was afraid, that this person would come through. the window in the bathroom, so I mean, this didn't just affect the students on campus. This affected everyone there, their the students' parents, it affected the residents of Gainesville. It affected everybody because this was terrifying. 5 people killed in, just a couple days. That's about as frightening as a crime can get for the people living through it. You can't avoid a person you might know. You can't avoid a specific neighborhood. The only thing connecting the victims was that they were young. Like I said, they were new to the area and they were alone in their apartments at night, which, if you're an 18-year-old who just moved to a college town for the first time, describes most people. So, what happened next in Gainesville is honestly one of the more remarkable parts of the story, separate from the murders themselves. Within about a day of the fifth body being found, the University of Florida, a school of tens of thousands of students, saw a wave of withdrawals. Some students who had just unpacked their dorm rooms, repacked, and went home. Some parents drove through the night from other states to pick up their kids. Hardware
I
stores
would've.
in the area, yeah, so would I. Hardware stores in the area reportedly sold out of deadbolts, window locks, pepper sprays within hours. Then Governor Bob Martinez deployed additional law enforcement to the area. State troopers and agents from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement joined local police and the county sheriff's office in a massive task force. At its peak, this was one of the largest manhunts in Florida's history up to that point.
Mhm.
And the fear wasn't limited to Gainesville. This was national news. CNN was covering it. It became, for a few weeks, one of the most heavily reported crime stories in the country, partly because of the brutality and partly because of something that made it almost uniquely frightening. This had happened at the start of a college semester to students who, in some cases, had been in town for less than like 48 hours. I mean, if you're a parent, I mean, as a parent here, if you're a parent sending a kid off to college anywhere in the country that fall, anywhere. I mean, this would make you think twice, because you're like, "Oh my god." It I can't imagine the fear that everyone was going through.
I mean, I
Local
only
business.
moved an hour away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, local businesses near the campus, they saw a drastic change in their evening foot traffic. Nobody came out, I mean, it was excuse me, roommates who normally went weeks without seeing each other started sleeping in the same room just so no one was alone. There were students who bought guns for the first time in their lives. Self-defense classes that normally drew a handful of people were suddenly packed. And through all of this, through the task force, the National Guard level of law enforcement, presence, the national media attention, investigators had very little to go on. There were no eyewitnesses, no 911 calls from the victim, no surveillance footage. Because I mean, this was 1990, and most apartment complexes simply didn't have the cameras. But what they did have was forensic evidence from the scenes. But
Right, and that's
this is also 1990, so DNA
today
testing
was,
did
like,
exist, but it wasn't
barely.
as fast and routine and as it is today. Samples could be collected, and they were, but matching them to a suspect required first having a suspect to compare them to. And for weeks, they didn't have one. So there was that there was something that kind of helped to turn this story a little quickly. It makes a lot of people uncomfortable when they hear about it for the first time. In the early days of the investigation, police did develop a suspect. They thought there was a local teenager who had prior issues, who, under intense media pressure and public fear, kind of the news outlets, they essentially said he was guilty, that it was this kid. And before any charges were filed, his name was circulated, his photo was circulated, and his life was, by all accounts, just turned into a nightmare because it was on suspicion alone. This kid had issues, yes, some criminal past, like a little bit of a criminal past, but I mean, his picture and name circulated, and he was ultimately not the killer. He was never charged in connection with these murders. But it is a part of the story that's worth acknowledging because it's a reminder of what happens when a terrified community and an aggressive media kind of collide. with this active manhunt and innocent people can get caught in in that loop of that, that fear.
Right, well, it's kind of like with the yogurt shop murders,
Yeah,
which is something
yeah,
that we can cover because there's a documentary that just came out
yeah,
on, HBO. So and I
yeah,
watched that, and this is kind of a lot like that, like, with, like,
yeah,
trying to figure out who it was and, like, how they had people and how those people got persecuted about it,
yeah.
so yeah.
I mean, even though this guy was cleared, this kid was cleared, the damage that's done by, speculation and the fear, it doesn't go away instantly. It doesn't go away
Mhm.
instantly. And, whether or not I don't know, like, anything about this kid. Was he a good person? Was he not? I don't know. But I mean, even if he did, do some, criminal activity in the past, he wasn't guilty of these crimes, and to suspect him of this and to just throw his name out there and his picture and to say, "Oh my gosh," I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, especially for a
And
teenager.
exactly, exactly. I mean, he did eventually end up graduating from University of Florida, but, he I'm sure it was not an easy path for him, and,
Mhm.
yeah. I can't imagine that. To be falsely accused. But anyway, in the meantime, the actual killer had already, in a sense, been caught, just not for these crimes. I'll go into that. So about excuse me, about 2 weeks after the murders on September the 7th of 1990, a man was arrested in Ocala, Florida, about 40 miles from Gainesville, for armed robbery of a grocery store. He gave police a false name. He was processed, charged, and held in the Marion County Jail. At the time, nobody connected this robbery arrest to the Gainesville murders. I mean, why would they?
And we
It's a different county, a different crime entirely. The man in custody had given a fake identity. So he's in jail for months, while less than an hour away, one of the largest manhunts in the state's history continues to look for him. And his name is Danny Harold Rawling. So the case eventually is broken, not through high tech forensics or anything like that, but through something much more old fashioned, a phone call.
you mean they actually shared information somewhere?
Exactly, exactly.
Because that's usually
I can imagine like a payphone, like going to like a payphone, calling the
like
hotline.
the circular
Yeah, like, closing the door of the booth,
but
So
like
that
the what is it? What was
the
it? The
rotary, like the
rotodial?
rotary dialer,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, because they didn't have
Oh my gosh, I love
911,
the 9 or the 0.
right? Well, and it's not like they had 911 around that time. Was it that or was it earlier? But,
For
like,
what?
if you had to call the actual police station, so you're, like, dialing the whole police station number.
Or like the operator, you have to call the operator. My grandparents had a party line. My grandparents had a party line back in the day. Anyway,
Hmm,
so that November, about 3 months after the murders, a woman called Crime Stoppers and named Danny Rawling as someone investigators might want to check out. When police started digging into Rawling's background, things started clicking into place fast. Uh, for one thing, Rawling was already in custody. He'd been sitting in the Marion County Jail since that robbery arrest back in September under a false name. For another, his background was deeply troubling in ways that lined up with what investigators had already suspected about the killer's profile. Someone with a military experience, familiar with the area, and with a documented history of violence. And then there was, of course, the DNA. Investigators were able to compare genetic evidence from the Gainesville crime scenes against samples that connected to Rawling, and they matched. But here's the part of the story that kind of takes it from horrifying local crime to something genuinely chilling on a much larger scale. When investigators started looking into Rawlings' past more closely, They found the Gainesville murders were not his first. About 9 months earlier, in November of 1989, 3 people had been found killed in a home in Shreveport, Louisiana, which was Rawlings' hometown.
Mhm.
A man, his adult daughter, and his 8-year-old grandson. That case had gone unsolved. The crime scene had certain disturbing similarities to what they later found in Gainesville, including the way one of the victims had been positioned because Rowling liked to position his bodies after he killed them and mutilated them. He liked to, yeah. Once again, you're more than welcome to look up details. I don't want to go into details, but they were horrific and they were very Ripper-esque, which is why he is called the Gainesville Ripper. So, and everyone knows Jack the Ripper was grotesque and gruesome. Like I said, so at the time, nobody connected the Shreveport killings to anything in Florida because there had been no reason to. They were 1,000 miles apart, and Rawling hadn't even been a suspect in either case. But once police in Florida and Louisiana started comparing notes, the picture became horrifyingly clear that it was the same person, that they were connected. And Rawling confessed eventually to all 8 murders. So who is Danny Rawling? Who is he?
Besides a psychopath?
A psychopath? Yeah, yeah. But I mean, in psychology class, I mean, and I love psychology class, I always wonder, like, why? What is in these people's minds? What makes them do the things they do? Because I seriously cannot comprehend why. So Danny Rawling was born in 1954 in Shreveport, Louisiana, the same city where, like I said, 3 of his victims would be found later on. His father was a police officer, and by most accounts, Rawling's childhood was marked by a lot of conflict with him. Rawling later described a pattern of abuse growing up, though hmm, it is worth saying that basically, I feel like in every serial killer case, there are plenty of people who experience difficult childhoods,
Mhm.
and yet they never grow up to hurt anyone. But I mean, I feel like in every or in most killer cases, you always hear like, "Oh, I had a rough childhood. I had abuse." But really, you know,
One
a hard
thing
upbringing doesn't really explain. It explains a person's pain, but it doesn't really
mm,
explain or excuse why they choose to do the things they do.
right. Did
You
he have
know?
a traumatic brain injury?
Yeah.
That's one
I
thing.
mean,
But it always feels like there's just, like, a missing piece in
I mean,
every
I know of a lot of people who have had abusive childhoods, who've had, parents abandon them, and I'm not downplaying anyone's childhood. I don't want to downplay anything like that. You know, People can take certain levels of certain things. However, it's how you choose to live your life. It's how you choose to move forward. It's how you choose to follow through with everything. And
Mhm,
does your past childhood experiences really justify murdering, mutilating, sexually assaulting, posing, like the things that were done to these people? Does it really justify? I mean, does it really explain why? I mean, there's nothing in my mind that, would explain why or excuse somebody for choosing to do these things. Anyway, so sorry, I digress. I
mhm,
always do. So Rawlings spent time in the military. He was discharged from the Air Force and went on to accumulate a long criminal record well before 1990. Theft, armed robbery, time in and out of jail in multiple states. By the time he arrived in Gainesville in late August of 1990, he'd reportedly been living as a drifter, camping in wooded areas around the edges of town, something he'd apparently done before. And even, going back to when he was a teenager. What's striking, though, was reading through how investigators eventually pieced his movements together because he was really, uh, it was unremarkable that he seemed to he was unremarkable. Like, he wasn't someone who stood out in a crowd. You know, he was he blended into a college town, as, like, most transient people can. He was just another face that nobody looked at twice. Like, he was really unremarkable, and so it's striking how investigators were really able to kind of move through his movements and piece his movements together despite how unremarkable he was. So the trial finally began about 4 years later, I guess, in 1994.
Mhm.
We're almost 4 years later. Rawling actually entered guilty pleas, to the Gainesville murders right as the trial was getting underway. So, I mean, there was no, trying to plea deal. There was not I mean, not he admitted to the murders. So, essentially, it was just the jury's job to decide, did he get the death penalty or life in prison?
Mhm.
So, they eventually returned the recommendation that he get the death penalty, and he was formally sentenced to death. He spent over a decade on death row, and in October of 2006, 16 years after the murders, Danny Rawling was executed by lethal injection at the Florida State
See,
Prison.
and that's the thing that has always confuddled me about death sentences,
Mhm,
because I know that, people go through the appeals and everything like that,
mhm.
but if there are certain people, like, he probably didn't wanna go through with all the appeals, that why don't they just expedite it then, you know?
That's that is interesting. I mean, I don't know what takes so long. Like, because if you think about it, I mean, I not to sound cruel or harsh or anything like that, but I mean, these people are sentenced to death. Even if there are no appeals, even if there are no, they're still taking they're they're still costing the state money. And I hate to sound that sounds cruel. I know it sounds cruel.
Mhm,
But I mean, if they're going to be executed, I mean, I really don't understand why it does take so long. I mean, maybe there's paper, I don't know. But I mean, it doesn't make sense because it's just taxpayer money that's being used to feed them, to house them, to clothe them, to, take care of them. I mean, that does sound cold and cruel and crass. But I mean, you're right. I don't understand the process. And maybe there is reasoning, maybe there is logic. Like you said, there are some that appeal. But, even for those who don't appeal, why wait? I don't know.
yeah, because, I
It,
mean, if you're gonna have the death penalty, then why prolong it? I mean, I understand that there are people who need to appeal it because they're
yeah.
there incorrectly, and we should just get rid of the death penalty anyways,
I'm
but
this could spark a debate. I mean, I'm a Democrat. I consider myself to be liberal leaning, but I actually don't have a problem with the death penalty because there are some crimes that are just so heinous that I figure, you know what? You did so I mean, this is it's so I mean, it's so rough because I mean, this is a horrible thing because obviously there's no option that's great. I mean, you're being put to death. Lethal
mhm.
injection is painful. Obviously, the electric chair is painful. Now they want to bring back firing squads. Firing squads. Let's just bring back the guillotine for God's sakes. Anyway,
Well,
they
I mean,
probably
it
will.
would be quicker.
But
Yeah, except for we're gonna do what the
for
French did.
for people like this that don't just shoot, you're dead. I mean, people get upset, anger, tempers flare. I mean, even if you take a gun and premeditate and you shoot once, that's yes, it's killing, but I don't really know if that death penalty, if that's required for death penalty. You know what I mean? But in cases like this, I feel like when the person seems to get this sick satisfaction. First of all, he did sexually abuse all of his victims, his female victims, even after death. Like I said, he mutilated and he posed the corpses afterward. That is not just killing. That is sick. I mean, that's going beyond what in my mind is I don't wanna say acceptable, but I mean, it's going beyond. And
Mhm.
that crimes like that and like Jack the Ripper, if they ever would have caught him, I just feel like that's I'm sorry, you do crap like that, I have no sympathy. I have no and I mean, and honestly, I mean, there are people who forgive, like the victims' families, there are people who forgive, who don't want the killer to, you know, like like the nickel mines killer, for the Amish school here in Pennsylvania. The Amish parents did not want I believe they did not want the man, you know, they forgave his family, there was I don't know, I don't remember, I think he was arrested, maybe or did he kill himself? But I mean, they forgave, they were, and they were very forgiving, but I mean, it's like, I don't know if I could forgive somebody who did something like that to my family members.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. He did die, lethal injection, 16 years after the murders. In another weird, unusual move because this man definitely seemed odd. The morning of his execution, he reportedly had a song he'd written performed outside of the prison, which, depending on who you ask, was either a strange final gesture or one more example of someone who wanted attention. Because this man definitely wanted attention from how he had staged his victims. So,
Yeah.
that's weird, isn't it? Like, of all things, like, you want a song, like, that you'd written to people. I didn't look up the song, I didn't I don't care, I don't want to hear what the song was about, I don't, I because I don't wanna give him any more attention than I already am giving him.
Right.
But so, I did wanna to kind of go over, like, what was left behind. It was easy with a case like this to get pulled into the mechanics, the timeline, the manhunt, the DNA match, the trial. It seemed to kind of all fall in place, like, once
Mhm.
the call came through for Crime Stoppers. But, those things matter for understanding what happened and how it was solved, but for the 5 people who were killed in Gainesville that August, they weren't characters in a story. They were 18, 19, 20-year-olds who had just shown up to start their lives, to study education, to study criminal justice, law, architecture. They had moved into new apartments, they were meeting new roommates, were probably nervous, excited, about the first week of classes, the way every college freshman is. In the years since the murders, Gainesville, the community had worked together to make sure those 5 victims were remembered. Not only, as victims of a crime story, but they were people. They were students who were starting to live their lives, and so there's a wall that was painted, and it's really neat. I looked it up, and it has like their names listed, and it had little hearts by each name, and then it says "We remember 1990," and it's the 34th Street wall in Gainesville, Florida. It's frequently, painted and updated, to honor the victims, the 5 victims. So that's really neat that they still keep that alive. But, so yeah, they have and there are a few I found that there are a few or there were at least a few other memorials. There were some trees planted and things like that to try to keep their memories alive. And, so this case, also I just wanted to let you know, it's interesting because later on, the broad strokes of a mass killer terrorizing college students was loosely influenced a famous slasher movie for Hollywood. So, yeah, it's Scream.
Scream?
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Scream was loosely based on the Gainesville Ripper.
Wasn't
So,
there also, like, the urban legend about the babysitter getting the phone call?
maybe, maybe. But I mean, like I said, I mean, it was loosely influenced by it, so, but yeah. So that's kind of, I don't wanna say claim to fame because who wants to, you know, have who wants to have that, be like, "Oh, that's excellent." But yeah, it kind of was loosely based on the Gainesville Ripper, so
Okay. Well, boo on him.
yeah. I mean, like I said, I reading about it was very disturbing. Hearing about it was very disturbing, and,
Mhm.
if anyone I encourage anyone, who wants to delve more into it to understand the heinous crime scenes that, like I said, even seasoned investigators were, like, just in shock over. I mean, you're more than welcome to check it out, but I really didn't feel that was necessary to go into. So,
Yeah.
but
No,
it was
definitely,
interesting
and
to hear a personal perspective of someone who lived in Gainesville at the time. Of course, like I said,
mhm.
Jeremy was a small kid, but, he was terrified. As a small child, he was terrified.
Oh, yeah.
And, he said he doesn't think that, he doesn't remember his parents, like, buying blocks or going, overboard. Because, I mean, yes, they lived in Gainesville, but they weren't, on the college campus, or near the
Mhm.
college campus, but he was scared. I mean, it was terrifying. So it was kind of interesting to hear that first person perspective as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just spun the wheel,
ooh, drum
so
roll,
it's your favorite.
history?
Mhm.
Yay! Oh my gosh. Wow. Sweet.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
it's kind
Okay.
of funny. You get a lot of the history. I get a lot of the
Oddities and
oddities and
weird crap.
character. Yeah,
Well, that's
which is
okay
kind
because
of
you're a weird friend.
befitting.
No.
I
I
know
was
it,
gonna say
boo.
it. You're a weird
I'm a
friend.
proud
That's okay.
weirdo.
I love you for your weirdness. I love you for your weirdness.
Hey, everybody loves Gondo. Gonzo, and he's a weirdo.
What God, like the like Gonzo, like the Muppet, right? The
Yeah,
nose?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh my god.
But
I
yeah, it's kind of
I felt for him. I did. I mean, everyone loved Piggy and Kermit and, their love story, which was cute. I'm not, writing off Piggy and Kermit, but, I mean, Gonzo, he danced to his own beat, you know. Animal was fun
my
though. I liked
favorite.
Animal. He
Animal
was
and Rizzo.
crazy. Animal reminds me of my son. Tyrion's Animal. He just punches right through. Like,
Animal.
he screams, he makes the noise, like, "Mama!" He's just crazy. So, yes, Tyrion and Animal are the same. I should show him that. I should show him that and say, "This is you, buddy.
Yes,
This is
but
you."
like the original Muppets, not just the movies.
Well, I loved the Muppet Babies when we were younger. I loved the Muppet Babies because I thought they were so cute.
The
And I
Muppet
I
Show.
like The Muppets Take Manhattan. That is one of my favorite movies. I loved, it was different. It was not, it had some music in it, but I mean, it was different. I just loved The Muppets Take Manhattan. That was, yeah. And when my kids and I went down to Disney, we went to the Muppet experience, which was a lot of fun. I mean, I feel like the Muppets, and you know what? You know what? No. There was a Muppet show, a new Muppet show that was out a couple years ago,
Mhm.
and I liked it. It was good, but they canceled it because people weren't giving it a chance, but it was actually really creative. It was really creative, and I thoroughly was enjoying it.
Yeah.
Sorry, maybe
But the
that's
thing
not a
is
popular view.
like the original one, that had like Vincent Price on there and stuff. is also
God,
pretty great.
I'm trying to remember the original. Like, I know, like, the chef and the 2 old guys but I'm trying to remember. But, I mean, we're not even gonna discuss when Jim Henson and his Muppets were on SNL. That's not the Muppets I'm talking about. I don't those Muppets if anyone has ever watched the very, 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 very old, the very original SNLs from, the 19, what's like late
Mhm.
what, 70s, early 80s, late I guess mid 70s. Those Muppets were weird. I mean, you're having a very adult show that, well, a comedy, but has adult themes, but then you have Muppets involved. And that was a weird combo, and I know, like, they were probably, Lorne Michaels were probably, just trying to get, like, different skits, to kind of hit on, a bunch of different things, like what people are gonna like, but that was weird. Like, there was no Miss Piggy, there was no Kermit, there was no, there wasn't any kind of, like, fun things like that. They were, like, weird, and the SNL actors didn't like them either. They thought they were stupid. They I think from what I heard, they did things to the Muppets, like, and Jim Henson was
Mm.
not very happy at all. He's like, "They're ruining my
Well,
Muppet." But
you know, you would think, like, the original Dark Crystal would
mhm.
have terrified no. Do you remember in Labyrinth where they had the pink
God,
bright
it's been a while
pink
since I've
and
seen that.
orange? What?
Labyrinth, right? The movie?
Mhm.
It's been
Yeah.
a while since I've seen that. Yeah, it's been
I thought
years
you
and years.
so there's a scene where they have these, like, really crazy looking weird Muppets,
Mhm.
and they go through and they switch bodies, and that freaked me out.
Yeah, yeah. Like
Isn't
the
that
Body
Dark
Snatchers,
Crystal?
like the movie The Body Snatchers. Yeah. Like,
No.
they
No,
or
it
they
would
just
just be like they would, like, pop off one head and then, like, switch it with another.
ew.
Yeah,
Oh no. Well, that
explains a lot.
there was not like I said, not to go into details, but I mean that there was something like that that kind of happened with a head and in the Gainesville. So, yeah,
Mm.
I mean, I mean, that it is freaky, like, when you're, just popping off heads and putting them on different bodies, yeah, and putting them places and just, yeah. Eh,
Well,
mm,
it was a dance routine between 3 I don't know what they're called, but
no,
I
that's
remember
freaky.
they're, like,
That's freaky.
neon pink and, like, orange and yellow.
That's freaky. I mean, anything that pops off, heads and stuff and, that's freaky. No. No,
Yeah, yeah.
that's freaky.
So,
But,
next week is my turn as well,
yes.
and I'll be doing true crime because that's what mine got, so you get a twofer this month, and, I think I might either go way, way back or maybe do the psychology of something true crime.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
we'll see, because I was watching, of course, Expedition Unknown because I love those shows, so, yeah. So that's what I'll be doing next week.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, I know you said true crime. You what did you say you were doing again?
I said either I'm doing something that I saw on, Expedition Unknown or Expedition Files. I can't keep up
X
because they have explanation or X in them.
okay. I don't know if I was excited here. I don't know, so
And then or I might do, like, psychology of a serial killer just to be a little bit different.
there
So
you go. There you go, just yeah, what we were talking about today, just yeah.
mhm. So, yeah, well, we want to remind you guys that we would like to have some of your stories, your experiences. Did you run into a serial killer? Did your parents run into a serial killer? Um, did you
Did
escape
you live in
death?
a town that this happens? I mean,
Did you see an alien? Did you
an
see
alien,
a
like Men in Black.
have you seen a not deer? Have you seen a ghost? Or, did you have a ghost tell you something? Give us your stories. You can send them to us at our email, which is so random and weird podcast. Also, I want to say something real quick. I saw on our analytics today, I was bopping around in our stuff trying to figure out something.
Bopping around. Oh, yeah, because of the
I saw that we actually had a listener from France. So, bienvenue.
That's so cool. Seriously?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's awesome. That's exciting. So we're
Yeah.
now international. That's exciting.
Well, at least my voice got somewhere.
Well, I was gonna say,
I
yeah, I
can't
mean,
afford to
even
go
though
anywhere
I've
else.
never gotten to visit, Europe and, it's exciting that our voices, our podcast has now, you know, gone over the Atlantic. My dad's visited when he wrote his book and, was writing and doing history on his book. He was able to visit, France and walk in the footsteps of the Band of Brothers, but I've never been to Europe, and I'd love to go, but sweet. That's exciting. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so get a hold of us. We've got rate and comment so that way we can get more people to listen and
Did
maybe
it s
more
did it
people who
say
listen.
did the analytics say which podcast they listened to?
No, no, it just
Okay.
said
It
what
just that
country.
they heard or watched
That,
or listened to one of them. Okay.
yep. And
Gotcha.
then also, rate and review. That really helps, gets us boosted.
And word of
If you
mouth.
send us
Word of
feedback.
mouth is absolutely I mean, like to say word travels fast, you always hear, like, the bad, but I mean I don't obviously, if you don't like us, I mean, no, just let us know, but, hopefully don't share that. I mean, let us know what we can fix. Let us know what we can fix, we'll be happy to fix it. But, if you do like us, if you do if one of our podcasts, even one is interesting, to you, share, tell friends, tell family, coworkers, just word of mouth is fantastic. We love word of mouth.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
have
what
a
they
Facebook
said.
page. We have a
Yeah.
Facebook page, so you can get on there and interact with us as well.
And we wanna hear
And
from you,
then,
not scammers. We've heard from,
yes,
we hear from scammers all the time. We don't wanna hear from scammers, we wanna hear from real
yes,
people. We wanna hear from you guys,
yes,
let
yes.
us
So,
know what's happening.
yes,
So
let us know what you would like to see. Give me a second here, because I kind of feel pulled to pull a tarot card. So let me grab my deck,
okay, yeah.
see my pajamas.
We don't judge, sweetheart. We love you no matter what. We, yeah, we don't judge.
And I don't exactly match,
Who is
but
it?
that's normal. I never match my socks. My pajamas rarely match. This is why I basically do just black. So there's my little booklet. So this is my deck from Ethereal
Love it, love it. Looks
Ethereal
beautiful.
Shadow Tarot.
Okay,
So this is just for the group, something that we can think about till next week. Maybe we'll start doing this more. I just
okay,
kind of feel
yeah,
pulled to pull one still. And this is how I do this, is that I will give it a couple of shakes, a couple of shuffles. I do a little tappy tappy to wake it up. And
yeah,
then pull. I don't look at what I pull. And well, there we go. We got the 6 of Pentacles and not so great with the minor. So let me pull it up here.
okay,
So, upright, it means generosity, charity, and support. The Six of Pentacles is a card of giving. With stability, one is currently in the position to share with those less fortunate. Balance expenses, comfortable situations, and stable. This card indicates that one is finally entering their era of providing. One has solidified their roots in wealth and grounded themselves strongly enough to be able to help those around them. So, and I'll show everybody the card because it's got some wonderful imagery on it. So, take that into next week for everybody.
Okay.
That, you know, it's it's gonna be stable. We're gonna have sounds like it's gonna be a good week
Yeah, I have a good feeling about this week. I do. I do.
as I put the box on upside down. So, yeah, well, Sarah and I don't know if you have any oracle or tarot cards and
I do. I love my oracle cards. However, they ended up getting scattered in my daughter's room. I'm gonna have to try to find them. I hope I can find them all. And I was very disappointed that they and I mean, I have other tarot cards, but these oracle
Mhm.
cards, this oracle deck was my go-to. It was mine.
Right.
And I just felt that these cards really spoke to me and really knew me. And now, I mean, if I can find them all, which I hope, obviously I'm gonna have to cleanse them again and or and just try to, get my energy back into it because they've just been all over her floor and in her
Mhm.
room and God knows what has been happening. So, I mean, I'm gonna have to, get some sage or something. Just be like, okay, come back to me, come back to me, come back to me. It's me
You can
again.
just
It's me again. It's me
get some
again.
selenite,
Exactly. Why
selenite,
yeah, I do.
but
I have
yeah,
some more of that.
no, I just felt like it's
Well,
something that
yeah,
needed to be
it was
said
speaking
and
to you.
pulled
Yeah,
out.
it was calling out.
Either that or I just manifested winning the lottery, so
Hey, hey, yeah. Seriously, if that happens, my dear friend, good luck. That is wonderful. And yeah.
there will be signs. I won't say it out loud. And in Oregon, you can accept it anonymously.
Good. Good. I wouldn't either. I wouldn't want people to know because then you'll have people coming out of the woodwork. You know,
Oh, yeah.
I'm your long lost whatever. Oh, do you remember me? I've I've broken my whatever and I need money for surgery, or my aunt is dying and needs a new liverectomy. I'm sorry. All this BS. Or you could just have friends who'd be like, "Hey, Sheena, can I borrow a few 100,000?" No, I would never do that. Wow. No, I wouldn't. Although, depends on how much you win, but no, I mean,
Depending what up.
I wouldn't want people to know. But I mean, like Mike and I have talked about like, the what ifs, because Mike has dreams of winning the lottery. And I'm like, yeah, sure. You have dreams, that's fine. Dream away. But I mean, we had talked about like whatever, like what happened, what would happen if, and we would love to be able to like, help, obviously our parents and I'd love to be able to help those in need. And of course, like, I'd love to like pay off my house and get, he needs a new car. I would, probably want to, put money away and CDs and things, but I mean, like, we'd want to help people. Ideally, that's what we'd want to do if we won. I mean, obviously, I'm sure things change and hopefully not for the worse, but hopefully for the better when you win money like that. But
Right. Well, and definitely for me, my biggest dream would be to have my own little shop where I
yeah,
make candles
yeah.
and body products and all of the little crafts that I do that I can sell. And I
Practical
want,
magic.
yep.
Like
And
practical
also,
magic.
yes, always,
Yeah.
always, ever since I saw that movie. And,
Yep. You don't put it
so
in your
me.
hair. Well, where do I put it? As she looks down at a certain area of the body. He's supposed to
Right.
put the cream, not in his hair.
Yeah. But also because, like, since I am neurodivergent, I know how hard it is to keep a job
Yeah. Yeah.
and also to find a job that doesn't want to kill you and also, to help, those who are fleeing domestic violence situations as well, help them get onto their feet, you know? That's the kind of see,
Yeah.
so basically I wouldn't stop working, but I would be doing what I want.
Exactly, and being your own boss and being able to, because you understand you. And you understand what it's like to work for the neurotypical people who can't communicate well with neurodivergent people,
Or they
and
micromanage because they
or they
think you're an
micro
idiot.
yeah. So, I mean, you know what that's like to be in that kind of atmosphere where you're trying to communicate with each other and you just can't. And you want to be in a position where you can welcome other neurodivergent people and let them have a job, let them, work with you so that, they have a safe place to be, to work, to, where they can, you
Just
guys can communicate
neurodivergent,
together. And, but yeah,
but
but,
also, like, disabled people as well,
yeah.
you know,
And because
because
you've
that
worked with that with staff and you've worked with that all your life, the folks
Mhm.
who are disabled physically, mentally, emotionally. I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
wanna open
I've
your doors
I've
to
been there.
yeah, you wanna open your doors to all of that and help others like that, which is great. There needs
Yep.
to be more
I'm
people
all
out
about
there like
community.
that.
Yes.
There needs to be more employers out there like that who are willing to take a chance, and work with
Well
yes, because it is harder, because,
Mhm.
that you have that communication barrier sometimes but, everyone needs to be employed. Everyone needs to be able to find a job and work, and be given a chance. And, it's I think more and more companies, I think, are opening up more when it comes to the neurodivergency thing. They are recognizing it more, but I don't feel like it's there yet. I just don't feel like it's there yet. It's the people who are judged maybe unfairly who are neurodivergent. Maybe they're criticized harder, and it's a shame, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Because
treated more
there's also
differently.
times, like, when you have your chatty Cathys who just wanna sit there and just talk, 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 and you're like, "Bro, I'm just here to work." Like,
Yeah, yeah,
"When I need a break, I'll come talk to you," but
yeah,
and then all of a sudden, "Well, you're not a team player." "Okay, well, is my work bad?" "No, you just are quiet."
exactly. There needs to be understanding. There needs to be support. There needs to be, and there needs
And
to
this is
be
what DEI is supposed to be,
exactly
giving you the
because there
diversity,
needs to be
it's
that
giving you
understanding
equal
that
opportunity and
yeah.
inclusion.
Yeah, because there needs to be understanding that, there are people who don't fit inside the box. There are people who are
Mhm.
outside of the box. You know, that they're not very social because they don't have those social skills. It doesn't mean they're not a team player. It doesn't mean they're unfriendly. It doesn't mean, you know, it's just they're neurodivergent. They think differently. Their brain is wired differently, and that needs to be addressed more. It does.
Yep. Well, and
It needs to be understood. So,
speaking of brains and wired differently, I get to go to therapy tomorrow. So,
yay,
yay! Everybody getting therapy. It does you wonders. So,
it does. I highly recommend therapy for anyone who is, needing to talk to somebody or is feeling lost, is feeling, that no one hears them. I truly you have to find the right therapist. That is the number one step. Because if you don't connect with your therapist, you're not gonna be you're not gonna be able to open up to them, you're not gonna be able to connect with them, and then it's gonna be pointless. It's really gonna be pointless to go. You have to
yes.
be able to connect with your therapist, trust them. It may take a couple sessions, but go with your gut. If you don't feel like, you're like, "I don't know about this person, I'm really not," after a few sessions, you're still not feeling it, then you need to move on, and that's okay. You need to move on to a different therapist. And you will eventually find somebody, but I loved having a therapist and talking to someone because it was one of the few times I feel like I was heard by anybody. I was able to vent, frustrations about my husband, the kids, work, life in general. And it was, I only did like a couple sessions here and there at a time, but it's what I needed at the time. It's what I needed. And it helped me to stay sane, to not go crazy and just like run from my house screaming. So
Right,
I
we need
highly
a thing that
recommend it.
says, "Get therapy!"
And I mean, there's nothing weak about it. You're not being weak. Everyone needs to have, you know, everyone needs to take care of their mental health, their physical health. It's not just about like taking care of your like when you're sick, you take care of your body. You need to take care of your mind too. You need to take care
Mhm.
of, because if you take care of your mind, your brain is where it all starts. And I tell my son this all the time. Your brain is where it all starts. If you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling angry, it starts up here. And then it can manifest into like high blood pressure. It can manifest into anxiety, stress, panic attacks, anger, rage, you know, punching walls, banging your head. My son was a head banger. He would bang his head into doors, into walls. I said it all starts up in here. So this is why it's important to take care of your mental health as well, because it can cause physical ailments and physical issues as well.
Yep. So,
That's my
get
bandwagon.
therapy t get therapy, touch grass, unless you're allergic to grass like I am, and,
I'm sorry, what?
yeah, I'm allergic to grass.
You're allergic to grass. I mean, we're not talking weed, right? I mean, you're talking
No,
grass, like from the
no, I'm
mowing the
talking, like,
lawn.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. I
So
don't
which
know
then
if I'm
you can touch, or at least I can touch, like, stone and go to the beach. But, yeah, I'm
I
allergic to
don't
grass still.
know if I knew that, friend. Okay.
It's
Another
very
interesting little tidbit about Sheena. Okay. Chickens and grass. Okay. Okay, we got
okay,
this. Chicken.
I'm not allergic to chickens. I'm allergic to
No,
all
but you're afraid of
animals.
chickens. You're afraid of
Yes, I'm
chickens.
afraid of chickens and turkeys.
And turkeys. Yes, and allergic to grass. Okay. I love you. Oh my god. Okay.
Alright, well,
All
guys,
right,
we will
friends.
see you
Well,
next week.
thank you so much for joining us. I don't want to say enjoyed, but I hope you were entertained. If if I can say that about my
Informed.
podcast episode, informed, and like I said, please reach out with questions, concerns, stories, whatever. We will see you next week when Sheena will do her true crime podcast. And just thank you so much again for joining us. We love you so much. And we can't wait to talk to you guys again next week.
Love you.
Love you guys. Bye.